Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful September the 17th, 2019. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're enjoying global warming down here in the South. I mean, I thought it was the fall football season, but it seems like the middle of summer. You know, go outside today, it was 97 degrees here. So I'm wondering, how this is going to affect all the games this weekend in the southern part of the U.S., but we're enjoying ourselves. I mean, I went out and worked on my tan today. It got a little bit darker.
Yep.
So nobody can say that I'm trying to sneak through anything.
You can't sneak through it all, Big C. It's all fair and love and war. It's all fun. It was raining cats and dogs, and I do mean cats and dogs in California just about 2 days ago. Now it's about 90 degrees, so a lot of things going on, but we'll take it as it comes. I want to say this segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the sports universe, but I do want to say today's show is also brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You're here, welcome to the show. And then I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And really appreciate the way things are going. Big C, I wanna just give out this national suicide hotline today. And it's a shame, but the more you pay attention to things, the more you notice that there are things that need attention paid to them. And so I want to just give it out as 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. You can also text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, again, as you always do, why is it so important to you to honor our veterans? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, we need to honor and recognize our veterans in any way that we can in America. And unfortunately, we're losing some 20 veterans a day to suicide crisis, Charlton. And this national suicide hotline that's out there, prevention hotline, it's there for those who are in need, or even people who think that they're not in need. You know, one of the problems with a lot of Americans is that we think we're strong, invulnerable, and invincible.
Yeah.
And so we don't lend a hand to those people that may be in need, because we have this thing where we don't want to interfere in people's lives. You don't want to get involved.
That's right.
But this is not getting involved. This is helping giving a helping hand.
Yep.
If you see someone who may be going through a crisis, you even think they're going through a crisis. Prevention is always the greatest thing, intervention in life.
Yeah.
So whether it's a veteran, Charlton, whether it's an adolescent, whether it's a young child, if you feel that somebody's being bullied, that they just are down on their luck or whatever, Charlton, this National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there for people to reach out with anonymity. No one knows who you are. You won't live in a world of embarrassment, people poking fun at you or anything.
Right.
But these are people who generally care, and they have answers for you. We need a person to talk to more than anything in life. That is the greatest tool that people have, is conversation.
Yeah.
So if somebody can lend an ear to you and just listen to your problems and hopefully have some advice for you, don't hesitate in giving out that National Suicide Hotline number to an individual or people or a group that you feel that are in need.
Yeah, it's so important. 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. I want to bring something up because I heard about it just today. But, sometimes when you ask a person, if you walk into a store, people go, "Can I help you?" Most people say, "No, I'm fine, thank you." Well, nobody's fine, Big C. We just have a facade. Because if you think about this, and I had this conversation with you, and I was really asking myself, as the Pac-12 is having some challenges with, getting stadiums to fill up, etc., and even some of the pro teams. The 49ers and the Raiders have not sold out a game in the last 2 years. They don't have to have 100% capacity to have it on TV. It's blacked out if you're less than 85%. But this is interesting because today, in the Bay Area media, they were talking about the 49ers being able to go to 2-0 for the first time since Montana was in town, and maybe go 3-0 if they could beat the Steelers this weekend in San Francisco, Santa Clara. Now, Big C, listen to this. The Bay Area media is asking people in one of the most expensive parts of the country to live to please buy tickets to sell out this game because the 49ers need their support. Think about that. Now, juxtapose that to the South where they don't have to ask for that. I want to get your thoughts. Do they have to ask people? I know Nick Saban says he'll punish people, but do you have the media begging people to buy tickets for NFL games? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the exorbitant price out in California, and going to a sporting event is a luxury.
Yeah.
And everybody addresses it different ways. When you look at Southern football and involvement in the South, Charlton, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It is a religion. In California, it's an auxiliary project as far as people going to sporting events.
Yeah.
When you talk about the 49ers and the Raiders not having a sellout in the last 3 years, neither one of those teams have been relevant. And I think that's a big part of what you look at is the relevancy of a team. Yes, the 49ers have gone 2-0 for the first time since 1989 on the road in back-to-back games opening a season, Charlton.
Yeah.
But that's just a sample test. If you look at that division, the Rams and the Seahawks in that division. The Seahawks are the only West Coast team selling out games.
Yeah.
They're not selling out games in San Diego, and they only have a 25,000 seat stadium for the Chargers. They're not San Diego, but Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
So when you look at what's going on in California, you have to be relevant. Southern football has been relevant. They've been competitive. They've been in the playoffs, college and professional.
Yeah.
And so up until the Rams made the playoffs last year, there was no relevancy in California.
Yeah. Well, think about this, Big C, because money talks, and Gavin Newsom, he was actually petitioning the federal government, which means you got to go through POTUS for help with dealing with the housing crisis in California. I know we build the big stadiums. The Chase Center is a $2 billion facility opening in downtown San Francisco. You have the one in Inglewood for the Rams and the Chargers. That's $2 billion. And this interesting part, California has about 40 million people, at least documented. There's 3.5 million homeless people in California. So Governor Gavin Newsom, he's petitioning the federal government for more help with Section 8 housing, which means they'll pay a portion of the rent. Now, the reason some of the stadiums are not full out here, it costs $3,000, $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. On average, that's real life versus sports, Big C. And the 49ers are asking people, please buy tickets. You got to buy tickets on top of paying $3,000 for one bedroom. Most people have at least 2 or 3 people in the household. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, but who demanded that those stadiums be built? You talk about the one in Los Angeles, $2 billion.
Yeah.
You talk about the one in San Francisco, the Chase Center, $2 billion.
Yep.
Would that funds been great to go out and help those homeless people? Think about it, that $2 billion, Charlton, was put into society
to
help those people with housing. How many houses could you have built, or even apartments, for $2 billion in Los Angeles and in San Francisco? I think Oracle Arena that we saw 5 consecutive NBA championship series played in, and I believe they just remodeled that place 8 to 10 years ago, so it was up to date internally as far as the needs of an NBA team. And even when you look at Los Angeles area, I know with all the teams down there, and you talk about the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum, I think they just put close to almost $750 million into revamping the Coliseum
for the press box
down there, as well as building the new stadium in Inglewood.
Yeah.
And when you have these facilities, who are you building these facilities for? You're building these facilities for the elite. You're not building them for the general public because the general public cannot afford it.
Yeah.
That's what you call separation of society.
Yep.
When you're taking care of the elite. And you also got to understand, the California government helped fund both of those facilities.
Yeah.
They helped fund the Chase Center in San Francisco. They also helped fund the new stadium down in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm just looking at you and listening to many people nationwide asking, how can we get the stadiums full? There are people saying, we're in a free enterprise country, capitalistic country. Capitalism's big. You can make money on your efforts. And there are people saying, don't pay these young black kids for making these colleges wealthy. And you know what? Colleges those kids have to also live in those areas, Big C. Even if they get on scholarship, they still got to live in those areas. So final thing about sports and politics. While POTUS is saying that Gavin Newsom, as the governor of California, is doing a horrible job with the housing crisis in California, and that good old boy flies out on the Air Force One and is asking Bay Area residents and fundraisers to give him $15 million for his campaign, Big C. Said nothing about addressing housing. He's going to have Ben Carson, who doesn't even know what an REO is, address housing in California, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, but that's the administration and politics. Well, when you think about that, politicians are always out fundraising. They're stomping not the general public, but their constituents. They're stumping corporations to raise the money for them. And the reason why he's asking for that money is because he's made that money for them. So he's asking them to pay some of it back. They have the money to donate wherever they'd like to donate. When you talk about helping the homeless, people look at return on investment, unfortunately, and even the federal government looks at return on investment. They're more apt to help a foreign country than they are to help within their own country, Charlton.
Yeah, and that's just part of life in love and war. And you're right, there's no stadium built anywhere in California or any part of the country that's not getting the city to go along with it. Even if it's privately funded, it still costs a lot of money that's put into a stadium. And for football, really, it's only used about 10 times a year for home games. You have some preseason games and then regular season. And then basketball, similar thing, about 40 times a year, 42 times a year. Baseball, right about 70. So everybody knows it's love and war. And sports sometimes it's not as important as having a roof over your head. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's big news in Northern California today. Also big news in Northern California. You have the great Bruce Bochy. This gentleman he's been a class act for the Giants. I love Dusty Baker when Dusty Baker was the manager for the Giants. You know, they've had some great managers over the years. And then you look at the great Bruce Bochy that's helped win 3 World Series in a decade time in San Francisco. So the San Francisco Giants, 3-time World Series manager Bruce Bochy, he's trying to get to win number 2,000 in Boston. And it's going to be Boston or Atlanta that'll get it most likely in his final East Coast road trip. And Bochy's the first manager, Big C, in Major League Baseball history to win 900 games with 2 organizations, both in California with the Padres for 12 years, and then most recently, the San Francisco Giants. It's amazing that he's stepping aside for whatever reason he wants to, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the time comes for everybody, Charlton, in sports, whether it's a player, whether it's a manager, whether it's a coach. You feel that your time is passed on. I mean, you've done all that you can mentally and physically to help the game be better. When you think about Bochy, here's a guy who has produced 3 World Series championships. Many managers go throughout their career and never produce one.
That's right.
So to be in that type of, that type of neighborhood where you got 2,000 victories and 3 World Series titles, Charlton, that's all the accolades you need to have a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, and when you think about, I think Billy Martin, I would say, is among the most famous managers, at least in Northern California. I think you can go with Tommy Lasorda, might be the most famous one, even with the Dodgers, just because LA is such a big media market. But Bochy's won as many World Series as anybody, for the same team in a decade span. I know that when you think about that, Tony La Russa with the A's, you look at Bochy and Billy Martin here in Northern California, Dusty Baker, all of them have managed World Series teams, Big C, but Bochy, I think, would be the head one in all of them, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you missed out on one. Dick Williams, who led the A's to 3 World Series titles, Charlton, in the 70s, under Charlie Finley there at the Oakland Coliseum. Back during the heydays when the A's were the talk of baseball, not just being a part of the league, but they were the talk and the darlings of baseball when they went through the National League, 3 out of 4 years in winning World Series titles. They had a host of all-stars in that lineup. Matter of fact, Tony La Russa was a player on one of those World Series teams. So they've had some great teams out there in California. Yeah,
it's amazing when you think about it. His teams have posted like a 44-33 record, at least a 5. He's winning at 57% clip for the postseason. That's pretty awesome. And then Joe Torre, 84 wins. La Russa, 70 wins. Bobby Cox, 67 wins. And they have more than Bochy. But when you talk about his name and some of the iconic managers, of course, in sports, I'm just appreciative the fact that it was here in Northern California, in the Bay Area, that we were able to see, greatness. And we've seen so many winning teams over the years, whether it's the Raiders, whether it's the 49ers, or the A's, and then the Giants, of course. So really appreciative of being here in Northern California. I want to get on to tonight's Major League Baseball schedule because there's a lot of things that people are just paying attention to. And you think about with Bochy, and they're already underway in Boston, and if they can win it at Fenway Park, I know Boston has, as well as New York, I think even Boston will surpass New York as far as baseball, royalty, because they still have Fenway when the old Yankee Stadium was torn down. Would you agree with that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about baseball in that Heritage Ballpark there, it's just like in Chicago with Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
Two of the last great ballparks in baseball. They have been remodeled and updated to come up to modern standard, Charlton. But I think the iconicness of both of those facilities is the history of those facilities that, when you have children there with their parents and parents there with their parents, or you got grandparents and even great-grandparents who have been in those facilities, and you could sit there together and you could reminisce and have a history lesson watching a baseball game in Fenway Park or Wrigley Field.
Yeah, and even I've been to both stadiums, and I still think that the way it's now Oracle Ballpark in San Francisco is nestled right there in the water, McCovey Cove. I still think that's the most beautiful place to watch a baseball game in the universe, Big C, but that's my opinion. I know a lot of people still like New York because it's rustic, etc. But it's a great event for Bochy, and I really appreciate what he's been able to do. I want to look at two of the top candidates for the American League and the National League MVP. They'll miss the remainder of the season. We talk about NFL players being banged up and quarterbacks. Think about the great Christian Yelich of the Milwaukee Brewers, out with a broken kneecap. I mean, that's horrible, Big C. He was the last season's MVP. And you think about Mike Trout, considered one of the best players in baseball, out for the remainder of the season with the LA Angels having foot surgery. How is it hit football with quarterbacks and baseball with MVP candidates in the same time, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about that baseball hitting parts of the body, Charlton, we saw one of the Atlanta Braves players hit in the face last week with a fastball and broke the orbital bone and his cheek.
Wow.
And he's requiring surgery. He's out for some length of time. Hopefully it doesn't cause any problem to his sight or anything, Charlton. But baseball is just a dangerous sport as football is. You don't wear the protection in baseball as you do with football. And, with Yelich, he fouled the ball off his own kneecap, and it fractured it. You figure that ball is coming at you at 90-plus miles an hour. It comes off the bat at over 100 miles an hour up against a kneecap that has no padding on it, and it broke that for him.
Yeah.
When you look at Trout has been struggling with some nerve problems in his foot for most of the season, but both of these players were on MVP pace, and if they had finished the season, undoubtedly Trout would have been the MVP in the American League, and Yelich is one of the top two players in the NL.
Yeah.
And I still think that they may finish, maybe one or two in the MVP voting with only 14 games to go in the season.
Well, that's amazing. And when we think about baseball, you have the LA Angels. They're at the New York Yankees. Imagine the home run hitters in that game. But again, no Trout. So the fans are missing out on that. But when you look at some of the schedule, you have Seattle at Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh also, a lot like I think it's PNC Stadium, a lot like AT&T or now Oracle in San Francisco. They built it right up on the water. I think Cincinnati's built theirs on the water, and a lot of teams go downtown. But the Giants, also the Pirates, have built downtown arenas, and they're right on the water. I think it's beautiful. You're feeling on Seattle at Pittsburgh, two ball clubs that really are not going anywhere, but at times they look like they can. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Seattle, they started off the season 12-3.
They were high.
How long ago April was.
Yeah.
Everyone had high aspirations up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, Seattle came back down to earth and then last in the Western Division of the AL.
Yeah.
The Pirates have just been an organization that's been struggling for the past several years. They have problems internally and externally with that organization. They had legal problems also. So, I mean, these are two teams that are just playing out the string right now.
Yeah, they really are, Big C. Another great organization, Toronto, the Blue Jays, they're at Baltimore. Detroit's at Cleveland. San Francisco mentioned at Boston. And if there's one more thing I can say about East Coast, West Coast, and everybody talks about the Dodgers and the Yankees or the Celtics and also the Lakers, football really doesn't have that. It used to with the 49ers and the Giants, maybe somewhat the Raiders and the Jets, but that's way back in the day. I don't think the Rams have ever really granted that East Coast, West Coast flavor. But I think when you have two, San Francisco, West Coast team in Boston, and then the Angels over in New York, that's great for baseball fans. Philadelphia at Atlanta, still like Atlanta. And I want to get your thoughts, though. Is Atlanta, have they learned enough last year by coming so close, yet so far away? Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, Atlanta's a much improved team this year over what they were last year. If you think about, this was a young team that nobody even expected to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And they shocked everybody by winning the East. And they're a much better team. They're going to clinch the East. They had 3 games to clinch the East, Charlton. Then it's all over. But they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you look at the rise of Atlanta with the young players, and staying healthy is always a key.
Yep.
They have Acuna Jr., who could be the next 40-40 man in baseball. He has 39 home runs and 36 RBIs. Got Marquez at first base.
Yep.
So this is a team, Dallas Keuchel, I believe, is pitching for them tonight, that they're ready for the playoffs. They've been battle-tested, and they're ready to go in their round 2 this year.
Yeah, he's going against Velasquez, so that should be an amazing game already underway. San Diego at Milwaukee again, no Yelich. The Sox, the Chicago White Sox at Minnesota. Washington at St. Louis. Cincinnati's at Chicago. And, Hugh Darvish is pitching against Sonny Gray. That should be a good matchup. Texas at Houston. New York, the Mets at Colorado. Miami at Arizona. Kansas City at Oakland. And then Tampa Bay at Los Angeles. I remember talking to you just yesterday, and I was saying if you saw the last game with the Oakland Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs, that might be the last game, an NFL game, that we'll see played on dirt over at the Coliseum in Oakland. You said, oh, not so fast, my friend. I think the great Lee Corso says that. But if the A's can be who they are meant to be, they're always knocking on that door, like Bum Phillips back in the day with the Houston Oilers, but they couldn't knock it in. If the A's can have their way, I think they're the most feared team to face. I know people might say in the American League the Houston Astros are the Yankees, but it might be the A's. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you get into the playoffs, it comes down to pitching. How deep is your pitching staff? We know that the Astros have 3 very solid starters that nobody really wants to face in a short series in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not like the regular season where you get a chance and you pitch every 5 games.
Right.
In the major leagues, Charlton, in the playoffs, you're pitching every 3 games. So this is a situation where the Astros have an advantage. The A's are young and enthusiastic, but they got to learn how to finish, and that's what we're waiting to see with them.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it. I know the Bay Area is more prodigal loving with the Giants, and especially Bochy going out. It's amazing that Bochy may go out in a year that they don't make the playoffs, and then the A's, they're like the no-name kids in the Bay Area, but they're the team that's making things happen over the last 2 seasons. So we wish everybody nothing but the best. I want to jump into what happened with the NFL last night in New York City. New York's the mecca for what? Because they have some bad teams. The Jets looked horrible. You have the Giants making a quarterback change. I thought they would go with Eli just for the month of September. You said it might happen sooner than that, so you're right on that. Give me your feelings on, before we even get to the Jets, let's talk about Eli and the Giants. What took the Mara family so long to cost the Giants? Did it take, falling behind 2 games before they did what's right for the fans? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've fallen behind 2 games, Charlton, and they're going to fall even farther.
Yeah.
What this move was about today with Eli was about Eli's legacy.
Yeah.
Eli, after Sunday's loss, was 113-113 as a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Wow.
What the organization is looking at with Eli is that they don't want him to end his career with a losing record, even though he has 2 Super Bowl victories.
Yeah.
That's what this move was about today in starting Daniel Jones. This move was about maintaining a legacy for Eli Manning. Joe Namath has a losing record when he went into the Hall of Fame as the quarterback with the Jets and the Rams in his career. He never had a winning season after winning the Super Bowl with the New York Jets.
Yep.
Eli Manning has been in that same boat with the New York Giants. After winning that last Super Bowl, his career has been on a downward spiral.
Yeah.
So I think this was more about saving face of a legacy, saying that he did not retire with a losing record.
Yeah.
But that's all predicated on Daniel Jones staying healthy also.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't and he has to come back into that starting lineup, there's no guarantee that he'll still win a game.
Well, that's interesting. There's also a talk that no matter what happens, that people don't remember that Joe Namath, Broadway Joe, did not have a winning record, Big C, but he got into the Hall of Fame, yet Jim Plunkett has 2 Super Bowls and a winning record and can't get in yet, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Jim Plunkett can't get into the Hall of Fame because of his color.
Yeah.
We do have one minority quarterback in the NFL Hall of Fame, and that's Warren Moon. But Warren Moon did not win an NFL championship. He won a couple championships up in Canada, but he never made it to the big game here in the U.S. And Jim Plunkett still has not arrived. He won a Heisman Trophy as well as 2 Super Bowl championships.
Yeah, out of Stanford also. So we know color matters. And what I'm so, there's something called the Edward R. Morrill Award. And it's about integrity and broadcast excellence. It's just about Googling the facts. So the next time I hear any national media saying, well, we don't know why, he just overlooked. No, you got to realize most of the quarterbacks in the NFL in the next decade, if they go with guys that can win, which is the run-pass option, they're going to become African-American unless they're Caucasian guys that have that athletic skill. And so going to the next 20 years, you'll see more men of color being voted into the Hall of Fame if the media that votes the men is more diverse. Big C, would you agree with that? They didn't forget anything. It's a color thing. Your thoughts?
Well, it's been an evolution of the game over the years. When you think about the involvement of African-American quarterbacks in the NFL, every time that one rises up, becomes a star, Charlton, there always seems to be a roadblock for the next ones that come along. James Harris, when he came into the league and led the league in passing with the Los Angeles Rams, they trade him the next year to the San Diego Chargers to back up Dan Fouts.
Yeah.
We saw the rise of other quarterbacks. Randall Cunningham. Vince Evans played in the league for 18 years with the Raiders and the Bears.
Yeah.
Dante Culpepper led the league in passing. We've seen a plethora of African-American quarterbacks have success. Donovan McNabb has gone to a Super Bowl. Jeff Blake was very successful as a quarterback with a couple teams.
Yeah.
We've seen what Russell Wilson has done in this league, and now we see the evolution of some young African-American stars when we look at Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray's coming along, Lamar Jackson, Charlton. We have a wealth of young African-American quarterbacks. The big knock against them for years from the media, and it was only the white media saying they weren't cerebral enough.
Yeah.
They could win college football national championships, but they could not win championships in the NFL. When they were given chances, Charlton, they have. If you look at the success of African-American quarterbacks, even the ones who have participated in the Super Bowl, they have winning records in the Super Bowl as well as through the regular season.
That's very well said. So let's go to last night's game at MetLife Stadium in New York City. And it's a beatdown, really. I believe it's 23-3 for the Browns over the Jets. We know Sam Darnold out there with the mononucleosis. I still don't think it's fair that the NFL, I know it's in their bylaws, but you shouldn't tell it what some condition that somebody has. That should be a private matter, a medical matter. But now you have, they are in New York City. I guess they call it the Mecca of whatever, basketball, football too, maybe baseball. How do you get beat by the Cleveland Browns, which were dominated just the week before, and you get beat down 23-3 at home when they were making such a story about the coach against Odell Beckham? They forgot about their offense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the trouble that the Jets were in going into the game, they only had one starting defensive back going into this game, 3 replacement defensive backs. They were out without their best linebacker defensively, without one of their defensive linemen, so they were struggling defensively going into the game. Not only that, they lost their backup quarterback, Trevor Siemian, so that gave them a lack of offensive productivity right there, and they were down to just one starting receiver. So the Jets were a walking mash unit going into this game. The Cleveland Browns had the physical advantage, and they had their starters in the lineup. They lost Ojoku, the tight end, during the contest with a concussion, but they still had 3 quality wideouts. Nick Chubb is an outstanding running back that they don't utilize enough, and I think it will hurt the Browns as the season goes on because they won't use Nick Chubb. But this was a game that was easy for the Browns to win because the Jets They were one of the worst teams in the NFL to start the season.
Yeah.
And they got even worse after game one.
Think about how the universe can justify things. How the media, New York media, made Odell Beckham Jr. the bad guy on that team in trying to shield Eli Manning. And the day that Odell Beckham comes back to that same stadium where he was sometimes booed by his home fans, Big C, he shows up for 100-plus yards receiving, 89-yard catch and run that they'll call a pass by Baker Mayfield. But that was a catch and run. He had to cut back against the grain. And that same weekend, that same couple of days, the guy that they tried to cover for, Eli Manning, is told, you got to sit the bench. Was Odell made the bad guy on purpose just to shade Eli, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if Odell was made the bad guy, but you needed to take some media focus off of Eli.
Yeah.
Odell brought a lot of media focus to Eli because Odell had lack of productivity.
Yeah.
And as a receiver with lack of productivity of his skill set, you got to look at the quarterback.
Yeah.
So it drew a lot of attention to Eli not being able to throw Odell open or even get the ball to him when he was open.
Yeah.
And so to ease that pressure off of Eli throughout the media's eyes, Charlton, you trade Odell.
Yeah.
You take that hit and get rid of talent that will be with your organization for the next 5 to 7 years versus a guy that you're trying to protect his legacy.
Yeah.
And all the moves that have been made with the Giants in the last 2 years has been about protecting Eli. This city fell in love with Eli, but this city also has fallen out of love with Eli because New York wants to see a winner. They struggle with the New York Knicks all the time and trying to find a reason why Dolan won't do something for that organization. And now it's rolled over to the Mara family. Why won't you let us and give us a chance to win?
Yeah. Well, I'm just happy for everybody who wants to win, and it's good to see players have success. Whether they love or hate it is part of life. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about some NFL football and why it's so exciting. I know a lot of people say that week 2 was not that great, but I tell you what is great. We'll take a break and come back, and we hope that you'll come back with us. All right, we are back from what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow us on Xfinity Comcast Television. But what I really love is the app by Alexa and Google. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, and the show pops up. Just like Star Trek. Remember back in the day, Big C, you could watch Star Trek, and it was Captain James T. Kirk always saying, Scotty, beam us up. He did it with his voice the same way you can follow Big C Sports. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, technology, when you look at a lot of the instruments that were used in that Gene Roddenberry series on NBC when it first came out, first integrated show in all of television.
Right.
But when you think about what we saw as kids and young adults in that show, it has now come to fruition here in modern times.
Yes, modern times now. So speaking of also what's come to fruition in modern times, we told you about Gavin Newsom trying to solve the housing crisis in California, and the same state that has 2 of its major NFL football teams in Northern California, the Raiders and the 49ers, they're begging people to buy tickets. And then in San Francisco, it's $3,000 on average for a 1-bedroom apartment. There's a lot of things that got to change for that to have sellout crowds, Big C. But going into week 3 of the NFL's top 10 ranked teams, Big C's choices, it's just our opinion. Everybody can have their own opinion. I would start number 10, Philadelphia, but I want to get your thoughts why they'd be number 10, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, the reason why Philadelphia is number 10, this is a solid team. I know they lost to Atlanta on Monday night or Sunday night down in Georgia.
Yeah.
But when I look what Philadelphia has, they have the tools to be an exceptional team. I mean, they're going to challenge the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. Carson Wentz, if he can stay healthy and get that receiving corps back that he has. He was out 4 of his receivers in the game. But this is a very solid team, and Frank Wright has done a great job there.
Yeah, they do look very good. And then this is amazing because I think with the Raiders leaving, it happened before. The 49ers found a lot of success when the Raiders had moved down to Los Angeles in the early 80s. I think they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl in 81, and then they moved down to Los Angeles and played at the Coliseum. And the 49ers started having more success in the late 80s. And they had sold-out crowds at Candlestick Park because they were the only show in town. Well, starting next year, they'll be the only show in town again. But I would say 49ers right now, it's a lot of dismay of a lot of people. Number 9, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, here's the 49ers getting off to a 2-0 start for the first time on the road since 1989. So you got to put them on the list and find out whether this is real or just a fluke.
Yep.
When you think about the NFC West, Charlton, this is a division with 3 undefeated teams in it.
Yep.
The 49ers have played outstanding defense in their first 2 games, so I put them in at number 9.
Let's go to number 8. And this is a team that's missed the playoffs the last 2 years with the highest paid quarterback in the universe. But the Green Bay Packers, are they destined to get back, or will this be is somebody else's fault, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Pack, Charlton, this is a team in two victories. They've only given up 19 points in 2 victories. So the Pack's defense has grown up. They've always put a lot of emphasis on Aaron Rodgers and his productivity, having the ball the last 2 minutes of the game. But the way that the defense has played thus far for the Packers, it wasn't warranted that he needed the ball the last 2 minutes of the game.
Very well said. Number 7, Los Angeles, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I look at the Rams, Charlton, this is a team that, concerns me a little bit defensively. Yes, they beat up on the Saints on Sunday, but the Saints were shorthanded. They lost Drew Brees early in that game. They had some big plays offensively, but can they keep that consistency up all year long? We know the Rams started out fast last year. They got a little sluggish in the latter part of the season, but can they play at that height? But Jared Goff is going to have to improve tremendously at quarterback.
Yeah, he's going to have to, Big C. Also, this might shock a lot of people, but the best team in New York would happen to be the Buffalo Bills so far. Your thoughts?
Well, the Buffalo Bills, made tremendous strides last year. And then I look at the draft that they had. They picked up some excellent players in the draft. They got rid of a lot of disgruntled veterans, Charlton.
Yep.
And this is a team that, Josh Allen, we were all critics of him last year, has played much better than what people expected. He led all NFL quarterbacks last year in rushing yards in the AFL. So when we think about his maturation and the defense that the Bills have, they've already won the Battle of New York. They beat the Jets and the Giants.
yeah, they beat them good, Big C, in their home stadium. Now, another great team is America's favorite team, allegedly. How about them Cowboys at number 5, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, a lot of people, a lot of critics will say, well, why are the Cowboys only at 5? Well, the Cowboys have a long season ahead of them, and they have an opportunity to move up. Dak Prescott is playing lights out at quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott has caught his stride on running the ball. He had over 100 yards in his last game rushing.
Yeah.
The defense always concerns me about Dallas. They've been injury-plagued the past 2 years.
Yep.
Can they stay healthy?
Yeah, they got to stay healthy, Big C. But I love what they're doing. This is the team that has the oldest coach in the league, in the great Pete Carroll, but probably the healthiest coach too. He eats healthy. He's doing something right. Maybe he eats a lot of fish in the Great Northwest. And the Seahawks at number 4, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is one of those three-headed monsters, Charlton, in the Western Division of the NL. You think about Seattle, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. They all play each other, Charlton. So this will decide who's the best team in the West just in head-up matchups, Charlton. That's a 4-game swing that either one of those teams can make. But when I think about what Pete Carroll has done in Seattle, people always still talk about the Legion of Boom.
Yeah.
But the team is still the same now as it was then. It does not have the namesakes that they had with the Legion of Boom, but you have a team playing tremendous defense if you look at their 2 victories over Cincinnati and Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And you have a quarterback that everybody underrates. But Russell Wilson, all he does is win, and he's consistent about it.
Yeah, and also being married to Sierra gives you reason to be happier when you go home as opposed to in the game, Big C. The number 3 team, I would say the Baltimore Ravens, even though they have a quarterback that many people said should be playing defensive back or wide receiver, Big C, does.
Well, when you look at what Lamar Jackson has done, at the quarterback position in this team, Charlton, the number of points that the Ravens have been able to put up, and he's been able to utilize both his arms and his legs. But they have a young receiving core that's very talented and speedy. They have a veteran running back in Mark Ingram. And the trademark of the Ravens has always been tremendous defense. If you look at the shellacking that they put on their 2 opponents, they shut out the Dolphins. Well, they gave up 10 points to the Dolphins,
Yep.
but they held the Arizona Cardinals in check
Yep.
with rookie quarterback Kyler Murray.
Yep.
The Baltimore Ravens are only getting better with Lamar Jackson being 9-1 as a starter in the regular season.
Yeah. I like him. I just hope and hope and hope that he stays healthy because he's a phenomenal athlete, Big C. Number 2 spot, and this reminds me of the AFC Championship last year, but they're a little bit older and wiser, the Kansas City Chiefs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's hard to think that a team can get better and still be only the second best team in the NFL, and that's what the Kansas City Chiefs did. They got better this year, and you think about the last game with the Raiders, they were without Tyreek Hill. But we're really going to find out who is the number 2 and the number 3 team in the NFL this coming week because the Ravens and the Chiefs face each other on Sunday in that head-to-head matchup. That's must-see television.
Yep.
But Mr. Mahomes playing quarterback there in Kansas City. I mean, This guy was the MVP of the league last year in his first year as a starter.
Yeah.
And he's picked up where he's left off. Kansas City also is much improved defensively. They held the Raiders scoreless after the first quarter of their game.
Yeah.
They basically shut down that Jacksonville offense the week before. So expect big things all year long from Kansas City.
Yeah. Now, this is a guy that's known mostly for the tuck rule. It's amazing when you bring in the Patriots as the top choice right now, and they should be. You got to knock them off before somebody says they're not the best team. The tuck rule is what made Tom Brady famous because they were not going to have that run at Super Bowls had that call not been overturned. The Raiders recovered that fumble, but like so many other things, sometimes you got to take your fortunes and make it happen, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the fortunes of the New England Patriots come from Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is the master that has held this organization together. If you look at how many games that they have won when Tom Brady was not the quarterback, when Matt Castle took over, they won 10 games on that season. When Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett took over, They won 3 out of 4 games during that run. Bill Belichick has a formula in New England that's second to none in the NFL. He finds players to fit his system.
Yeah.
When you think about the media that goes on, the media does not go into Foxborough and try to disrupt that organization.
He won't let
Even since Antonio Brown has showed up in New England.
Yeah.
Have you heard from Antonio Brown? No.
Nope.
This is the Bill Belichick show. This is the reason why the New England Patriots are the best team in the NFL. Because he orchestrates everything that's going to go on.
Yeah.
It's about football. It's not about all of those extracurricular activities that will distract from a football team.
Yeah.
When you look at the offense, Tom Brady is just uncanny and ageless as far as what he does. New England probably possesses the best defense in all of pro football. People talk about the Bears and these other teams.
Yep.
Look at what New England has done against its last 3 opponents in the NFL.
Good. Yeah.
They gave up 3 points to the Rams in the Super Bowl. 3 points. They gave up 3 points to Pittsburgh in the opening game.
Yeah.
They gave up 10 points to Miami in week 2 of the NFL.
Yeah.
So this is a football team, Charlton, in its last 3 games defensively, has given up 16 points. They've given up 1 touchdown in their last 3 football games. This is why New England is number 1 in the NFL.
Yeah, they're a pretty good team. Also, a team that's trying to get back because we're always accustomed to seeing the Pittsburgh Steelers win. I remember the terrible towels back in the heyday when they had the steel curtain. The Steelers make a big trade today with the Dolphins, and they gave up the number 1 draft pick for 2020, Big C. I think it's going to help them on defense. Your thoughts?
Well, they made a move for Micah Fitzpatrick. They coveted him last year in the draft. They weren't able to get him because the Dolphins beat him to the punch. But the Steelers right now are trying to stop the bleeding. When you think about what they have not been able to do defensively, they were not able to stop New England. They were not able to stop Seattle. And what was the weakest part of their defense? Their secondary, Charlton.
Yeah.
They need to find some people that are going to make plays on the back end of their defense. So you give up a draft pick next year for a guy that you need right now. But also Pittsburgh has to look at this. What are they going to do about the quarterback situation? I know Mason Rudolph, they have a lot of praise about him. They traded Josh Dobson to Jacksonville the week before Ben Roethlisberger got hurt. And that reminds me a lot of the Terry Bradshaw situation when they did not have a draft pick and they passed on Dan Marino.
Yeah.
Dan Marino, they could have drafted him the same year that Terry Bradshaw injured his elbow, just like Ben Roethlisberger. He injured his elbow the 4th week of the season.
That's good knowledge.
That ended Terry Bradshaw's career.
Yeah.
I see a similar situation right now with Ben Roethlisberger, What are they going to do going forward? It was Cliff Stout then. It's Ben Rudolph now.
Let me get your thoughts on something. I know people are going to say, oh, no way, no way, no way. If you need quarterbacks, and so many top guys that went down, I know Kaepernick had that settlement with the league. Will the blackball stand, Big C? Will they say, no, he's blackball, period, Big C? Your thoughts?
He is blackball, period. Colin Kaepernick will never take a snap in the NFL again, Charlton. That's collusion between the owners. You have 32 guys that say, no, we're going to do this. We're going to make a stance. You have to understand that the league is bigger than an individual.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick is, as they say, is collateral damage, casualty of war.
Yeah.
He went to bat for a social cause, Charlton. The NFL was not behind him on that social cause. Regardless of what the NFL says, what they stand for, and how they want to have community outreach, no, he called the NFL out. He made the public aware of what the NFL lacked, and that was public empathy. And so because of that, the NFL will say, no, we don't have to employ you. There are many other quarterbacks out here that might be as talented as you, but there's a lot more that's less talented than you. The NFL is built on losers, Charlton. You're only going to have one winner, regardless of what you say about a season. At the end of the day, only one team is going to hoist the Super Bowl trophy. Colin Kaepernick won't ever get that chance to try to host the Super Bowl trophy again, because if you look at the ownership of the NFL, it is all white except for Shad Khan. So he can never be a majority vote to say, guys, we're going to let him back in.
I think we could just put that in stone. And I mean, there's always an opportunity, like a 1% chance, like winning the lottery. NFL quarterbacks who started the season and will not start week 3. This is not week 13, Big C, week 3. You have Nick Foles, you have the great Eli Manning, Drew Brees, Sam Darnold, but he has a kissing problem. He didn't get hurt in the game. Big Ben Roethlisberger, and Cam Newton, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, there's a possibility Cam Newton will be that other quarterback that won't start this week. But when you think about it, Eli Manning, of all those quarterbacks, is the one that doesn't have an injury other than to his ego. But, it just shows the attrition rate in the NFL. You're sitting there and you're naming 5 or 6 guys that started the season, Charlton. And now they won't be starting week 3 of the NFL season. This is a tough game physically on everybody, and everybody will note out the quarterbacks that are not starting. But if you went down the injury list of the NFL right now, Charlton, you could field an all-star team.
That's true. We had this talk about not wearing a certain helmet. Is the quarterbacks that didn't complain that are being hurt also. Which NFL young quarterback is worth all the money that Prescott for the Cowboys? I mean, think about it. 337 yards per game, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and that was tipped in the QBR of 96.2. Carson Wentz, Philadelphia, 272 yards per game, almost about 80 yards less, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So half the touchdowns, twice the interceptions, QBR 72.4. The great Jared Goff, think about this, Big C. He only averages 235 yards a game passing, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, QBR 35.1. But he's white. He's what the NFL wants. He can barely pass for over 200 yards a game, but they gave him more money than Prescott's ever seen in his lifetime, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, both the Eagles and the Rams gave Jared Goff and Carson Wentz guaranteed money, over $100 million in the offseason prior to the start of this NFL season. All 3 of those quarterbacks were drafted in the same year. And you think about the productivity of them, Charlton. Yes, Jared Goff has gone to a Super Bowl and lost. Yes, Carson Wentz has been on a Super Bowl team that won. Dak Prescott has the best winning record of all of those players, Charlton. And when you look at him statistically to start this season, he has proven that he's even much better than they are. The cry about everybody saying that Dak Prescott is not a franchise quarterback.
Crazy.
I guess when you put up numbers that are second in the league amongst all quarterbacks, Charlton, I don't know how the white media is saying that the guy is not a franchise quarterback.
Fake news, Big
with
C.
his winning record, with his attitude, with his choir boy background, Charlton. He's done all the things right. And you think about how easy it is for a white young quarterback in the NFL to get paid, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, who can't stay healthy, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff. your cousin in Minnesota who has never had a winning record. So it's easy. And they're saying that a black quarterback should give a team discount.
Yeah.
I know how the media beat up on Russell Wilson when he demanded to be paid in Seattle.
For winning.
Because he is the heart of that organization with the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And the media threw so much vitriol at him. How dare he demand money from an organization?
Yep.
He's not white.
Yeah.
How do you think he can get away with it? This is that uppity attitude that they feel that black players have when they want to be paid equally.
I've always believed in, because California is very integrated. At least people get together on the outside, and who knows what life is like behind closed doors. And there's a lot of good people of all colors. That's why I love talking about this. I would really love to be not the fly on the wall, but the person sitting at the table in corporate America to really hear from white men, what does it take? What's it take to make decisions? If you're in a position of power as an ownership right now, we know how the country developed. There's a book called A League of Rivals, and you don't have to like everybody. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter what color you are. But if it's all about winning, like the great Al Davis, I think why they called him the Maverick, is he did not consider skin color as much as some of the other white guys, even though maybe he had some of that in him too. But from everyone's saying, as far as I know, Al Davis was very fair, Big C. The first black quarterback of the league, first black head coach. The man was fair. And I wonder what it is about white men that would rather lose with a white guy than win with a black guy at a leadership role in football. I know the great Steve Young said the NFL is becoming like the NBA, where black guys rule. I don't know if he made something nefarious about it, but when black men have power, why does that seem like a threat? And even people speaking euphemisms about the threat. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Al Davis being a trailblazer in pro football, you realize in the first 20 years of the Raiders organization, Charlton, he had 4 minority quarterbacks, and he had 5 in total during his ownership of the Raiders. He had 5 minority quarterbacks in the Raiders organization by 1985. So when you think about a guy being a trailblazer for equality, in the first 25 years of the Oakland Raider franchise, they had more minority quarterbacks than any organization in pro football history.
Davis. Yeah.
So as you think about that and giving opportunity, one of the things you don't want to give away, Charlton, when you're running an organization is have the people that look like you not represented.
Yeah.
And that's what the quarterback position has always looked like. The quarterback position for the main part of the NFL's history has looked like the owners.
Yeah.
When you're talking to the guy and you're joking with the guy and you're playing golf with the guy, Charlton, you want him to look like you. So you don't have to look around and be politically correct.
Yeah.
That's why the quarterback position has stayed what it has stayed in the NFL forever. You look how Eli Manning has been protected with the Giants. Perfect example with the Mara family. Here's a guy that you know has been failing. Even the fans have said, hey, he's killing us.
Right.
You fired coaches because of this guy, because they benched him, even though he couldn't be productive. You hired another coach, and part of that coach's deal was you play this guy at quarterback, regardless of what the team does or doesn't do. You trade away good players because they criticize what you're doing play calling wise. And if you criticize the play calling, then you're also criticizing the quarterback. This is the problem that you have in even the modern day NFL. Is that because certain players look like you, it's easier to sit down and talk to them. You think you can have the same conversation that you have with Eli Manning that you would have with Deshaun Watson? No, they come from 2 different backgrounds, 2 different makeups. Even the jokes you tell are going to be different. You got to be sensitive to that. And ownership doesn't want to do that, even in corporate America. You look at Donald Trump's cabinet in the White House. He got Ben Carson, the one flunky he got there. And you take a guy who's a neurosurgeon and say he's going to be director of urban housing. Yet the only thing he's ever done is drove down the freeway past the ghetto. He's never been in the ghetto.
It's just funny, but I like talking about it because of Billy Graham, the late Billy Graham, and the late Dr. Martin Luther King. They were black and white. They helped each other, and they believed in egalitarianism. I love talking about it. Big C, the lowest ticket prices to see a Power 5 conference team. ACC, you have Western Michigan at Syracuse, $3, Big C. In the Big 12, Oklahoma State at Texas, $2. You can't even get a rib for $2, Big C. Big 10, UConn at Indiana, $14, the cheapest ticket. In the Pac-12, you have California at Ole Miss. That's $14. In the SEC, Kentucky at Mississippi State. You can't even get a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken Family for $8. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, it just shows the difference in price around the country, as far as the demand to see a game.
Yeah.
You're lowering ticket prices some places so low just to try to get the butts in the seats, Jonathan. So as we see a lot of these packed houses around college football, it's a very affordable thing, and it's a great family atmosphere to take the kids to.
Well, think about family atmosphere. The most expensive ticket in college football this weekend, Big C, is going to be down there in your neck of the woods. It's called Between the Hedges at Sanford Stadium. University of Notre Dame visiting the University of Georgia. The average ticket price will be $611. The seating capacity is only 93,246. So if you take 93,246 times 611 for the average seat, that's $56,991,636. Big C, what a bargain. Your thoughts?
Well, I guess that's a sad day for college football, something that you're going to have a gate of a little less than $60 million for this nationally televised game. These two teams have not met in the past 2 years. The last time they met, it was down in South Bend when Georgia went on that miraculous run to end up against Alabama in the national championship game when they won the SEC title. And you look at Georgia again, Charlton. This team is on the cusp right now of challenging Alabama for that SEC title once again.
Yeah.
But this game against Notre Dame, with the national attention that is drawing, we always talk about the money in college athletics. I know Georgia just, allocated out $80 million for athletic improvement on campus for all of their facilities, sports-wise.
Yep.
So when you think about when they say, okay, they allocated out $80 million in facility upgrades on campus.
Yeah.
Think about it. You got one gate that's making less than just under $57 million for one weekend. That's just the tickets, Charlton.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the concessions, the souvenirs, and all those things. We're talking about this weekend alone can bring in $80 million for the University of Georgia.
That's a lot of money, Big C. So I know it's amazing, and there's a lot of money in this sport. And when people start making that argument that we cannot pay the players, just start Googling how much money they're making for a game. The top games in college football this weekend: number 7, Notre Dame at number 3, Georgia; number 11, Michigan at number 13, Wisconsin; number 8, Auburn at number 17, Texas A&M; number 10, Utah at USC; Oklahoma State at number 12, Texas; and number 22, Washington at BYU. Which one reaches out? What's a must-see game outside of Notre Dame, Georgia? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'm very interested in what's going to happen there at BYU with the University of Washington.
Yeah.
You think about BYU, that they've knocked off Power 5 conference teams back-to-back weeks in overtime. They knocked off the University of Tennessee. They've also knocked off USC, Charlton, which everybody had, up until a week ago, possible favorite for the Pac-12 title.
Yeah.
Now, Washington is coming off a Game 2 loss, and so they're trying to rebound after, winning last week.
Yeah.
How are they going to fare up in Provo, Utah, Charlton? Once you get up there in that altitude in Utah, it's a struggle for anybody.
Yeah,
and Washington is coming from sea level.
Well, think about this. In the college rankings and how the bowl games are important, but you got to decide who's going to get there by the rankings. So Utah at USC is really big for the Pac-12. Think about this, Big C. In the national rankings, you have in the SEC, Alabama's number 2, Georgia's 3, LSU is 5, Florida's 8, and Auburn's number 9. So they got 5 teams ranked in the top 9 in the country out of the SEC. When you look at the top 24, the Pac-12 has 6 teams. They have Utah at 11, Oregon at 17, Washington State at 18, Washington at 21. You have Cal Berkeley at 23, and Arizona State at 24. So the Pac-12 actually has more ranked teams on the national level than the SEC. They're just ranked lower. So if Utah runs the table, I think strength of schedule will help them, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if Utah was to run this table, Charlton, then they're beating teams that won't be in the top 25. If you talk about those lower-ranking teams in the Pac-12, if Utah beats them all, they're all going to drop out of the top 25.
Yeah.
The team with the toughest schedule in the country, Charlton, is Texas A&M, who has a big battle this weekend. Texas A&M, remaining on their schedule, Charlton, they have 5 teams in the top 9 that they play. If they were somehow able to run the table, which I don't think that they will, they would actually make the college football playoff just on strength of schedule alone. Even though they have that loss to Clemson already.
Yeah.
But another big game this weekend is the University of Michigan at Wisconsin.
Yep.
And so Jim Harbaugh is only 1-5 on the road against top-ranked teams, Charlton, since he's been the head coach at Michigan.
Yeah.
So this is a challenge for the Wolverines early in the season. We know they laid an egg last year against Ohio State.
Yep.
Will they come out against Wisconsin and the great Jonathan Taylor at running back and do the same thing early in the season this year?
Well, you're a restaurant connoisseur. I would like to ask you which tastes better, Wolverine or Badger. I know which one would win the fight, but we see which one does taste better. For your thoughts.
Well, I think they're both a little gamey, Charlton. The fur is nice on your back, but that meat's a little gamey.
Meat's a little gamey. You can follow Big C Sports. That's also gaming every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a TV set at home, and most people do, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. But I really love the app called Alexa and Google. Just say Alexa or Google, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate our sponsors. I want to finish out today's show, Big C. We talked about so many things. The HBCU, Historical Black College Universities, top 10 teams. #1, North Carolina A&T, followed by #2, Bethune-Cookman. #3, Alcorn State. #4, Southern. #5, South Carolina State. #6, Prairie View A&M, followed by #7, Alabama A&M, followed by Grambling. #9, Jackson State. #10, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Big C, is very important that we, instead of saying, well, they don't put a lot of black schools on TV. Big C Sports been doing it for the last 2 years on radio, Big C. Your thoughts on why that's so important?
Well, Charlton, I feel it is very important to recognize the history of black athletics through collegiate participation. And the historical black colleges have always been a strong force for black athletes, even prior to integration.
Yeah.
It was the main outlet for most young black athletes. On the West Coast, I know teams have been integrated, but throughout the South, you think about the growth of the SEC Conference, Charlton, since 1970.
Yeah.
It's been fueled by black athletes. You talk about the dynamic shift of college sports, where the West Coast dominated the national scale, Charlton, as far as championships, even the Midwest.
Yep.
As far as winning college football national championships west of the Mississippi. You had states of Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, California, Colorado even winning national championships.
Yeah.
But after integration in 1970, there was a paradigm shift to the SEC, Charlton, where they started incorporating African-American athletes into their program. And you see the growth and the power of the SEC.
Yeah.
But that came at a dramatic cost, Charlton, to the HBCs, because those prime athletes who were attending the HBCs, making them strong, becoming first and second round draft picks in the NFL, now we're being swayed away by these huge universities with an opportunity to be seen on television.
Yep.
The growth of the ACC was the same. So these HBC schools, Charlton, need the recognition. They need to be on television. The corporate television has forgotten about them, Charlton, and with lack of funding, they can no longer attract the great athletes that they once did, even though the athletes they have now are still matriculating into the NFL.
Yep.
But we always need to recognize our heritage and our history.
Well, and we'll make sure we do that on Big C Sports. I know more programs will start talking about that and having a special, but we're going to do something every week, not just once a month, Big C. I love talking about sports and politics. I love everybody that has the chance to read. If you can't read, Google Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we started off the show talking about the great state of California. You got two teams out there that could be in potential trouble this weekend, UCLA and USC.
Yeah.
If both of those teams go down this week, Charlton, which one of them will be the first to make a phone call to Urban Meyer, the Fox News broadcaster, former Ohio State head coach, saying, hey, we got money and a job for you?
Money and a job. Everybody needs money and a job, but you can have one too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.